House Oversight Chair James Comer issuing a subpoena to Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas and several DHS and Secret Service officials. The move is related to the Secret Service allegedly tipping off the Biden transition team regarding a planned Hunter Biden tax probe interview back in 2020. Now, Comer telling Fox News Digital, quote, the Department of Justice initiated the Biden family cover-up, and now DHS, under the leadership of Secretary Mayorkas, is complicit in it. The Oversight Committee is working together with Judiciary and Ways and Means committees. Joining me now, Louisiana Congressman Mike Johnson. He's House Republican Conference Vice Chairman and a member of that Judiciary and Armed Services Committees. Congressman, good morning.
Hey, Cheryl, great to be with you.
Great to be with you. Your response to this new subpoena from James Comer?
Well, it's a necessary step. We have to do this. My good friend Jamie Comer was on my podcast on Friday, and we discussed our ongoing frustration about the fact that these federal agencies truly have been weaponized. The Department of Justice, the FBI, the IRS, now the National Archives are impeding the investigations of the House. And what's important to point out here is that our House Oversight Committee that Jamie chairs, our House Judiciary Committee, and the Select Committee on the Weaponization that I serve on are doing the job that should be done by the Department of Justice, but it's not. And so what we're doing right now is our constitutional responsibility. And when they're engaged in a cover-up to protect the president, we have to pursue this vigorously, and that's what we're doing.
I want to ask you about House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. So he says, quote, if we move forward with an impeachment inquiry, this is, of course, to President Biden, it would occur through a vote on the floor of the People's House and not through a declaration by one person. So Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz issuing a new threat yesterday. He says if McCarthy stands in the way of pursuing a Biden impeachment, and to be clear, I am talking about President Biden, some Republicans, he says, may try to oust Kevin McCarthy. What is your reaction to Matt Gaetz' comment here?
Well, listen, Matt and I sit next to one another on House Judiciary. We work on the Select Committee on Weaponization. We've seen a lot of evidence that a lot of our colleagues in the House have not yet been able to go through because they're not on the committees of jurisdiction. I think what Kevin said and McCarthy said is that impeachment inquiry is the next natural step forward. And he's right, because here's the issue, Cheryl. We now have credible allegations and stacks of evidence now that are mounting to show that Joe Biden engaged in multiple bribery schemes. Now, we do not have a choice but to pursue that. Why? Because Article 2, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, that every member of the House took an oath to uphold and support, says very clearly that a president shall be impeached if he's engaged in bribery. It's the second cause listed. Treason, bribery, high crimes, and misdemeanors. We spent years debating what high crimes and misdemeanors are, but everybody knows what a bribe is. We do not have a choice, because we took an oath to uphold the Constitution, to follow this truth where it leads. The politics aside, we have to do our duty under the law, and that's what we're doing right now, and that's why I think you're going to see everybody come around a consensus on this as soon as we return to the Hill in a couple, or next week, actually.
Okay, yeah, next week you're coming back. Don't forget to get on that airplane. My colleague Brian Bremberg's on set. He's got a question.
Congressman, I'm hearing so often about impeachment inquiries and impeachments, and I know there's a distinction, but obviously there's a disagreement among Republicans in Congress about which one to pursue first. Does an inquiry inevitably lead to impeachment? Help people understand, like, what's the path if you go inquiry versus straight to impeachment?
Yeah, it's a great question. The inquiry is the next natural step, as McCarthy said, because that's what allows Congress to have the advanced subpoena authority and investigatory authority. See, normally under a congressional investigation, everything that the House is doing is supposed to be related to a legislative purpose. Ultimately, there's a law that we want to pass or revise or something. Now we are engaged in this. The evidence is leading us towards impeachment, and the inquiry is the step to get us there. It will allow us to push through the blockade of these federal agencies that are withholding, for example, the pseudonym emails of the president and records about Hunter Biden flying around on Air Force Two when Joe Biden was vice president and engaging in these schemes with foreign oligarchs and adversarial nations. We need that information desperately, and this will be the next step. It's not inevitable. that it leads to an impeachment. I have a personal belief that it will, but we have to follow that truth where it leads. If it exonerates Joe Biden, then it does. But again, that's a political calculation. Right now, what we're supposed to be engaged in is our lawful responsibility under the Constitution, and that's what we're trying to clarify here.
All right. Well, I do want to ask you about this. There was an interview with the New York Times last week where New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, another colleague of yours, other side, was asked why she hasn't visited the border while President Biden's been in office. So she dodged the question, basically. She said, well, this is something that we're actively planning on. What I have done is tours of our New York area facilities. Is that enough of a response from a fellow congresswoman who's sitting with you and watching what's happening on the Texas border in particular to say, well, we might go, but I'm going to the MAGA facilities, so that's okay?
No, AOC and all of her Democrat colleagues are absolutely shameless in their handling of the immigration issue. Obviously, they want the open borders. That's an intentional policy, and now they're seeing the results of it. You have big cities, her city, New York City. You've got Chicago, Boston, these other blue city havens and sanctuary jurisdictions who are now crying out to the federal government for assistance. They're demanding federal taxpayer dollars be sent to them to handle the housing and the health care and the security of all these illegals who are flooding their towns now. AOC is getting what they asked for. And the fact that she hasn't been to the border under the Biden administration to show us all of her crying videos and everything tells you exactly what this is about. It's a political scheme. They want to flood the country with illegals because at the end of the day, they want to turn them into voters. They're already doing that in municipal elections in Manhattan, and they want to spread that around the country. So I think the American people have had enough of this. I think they see the crisis it's created. It's a catastrophe now, and we need the Democrats to come on board with us and demand that the policies be changed.
A catastrophe that has spread across the country to some of the most beautiful cities in the country, and certainly everything on the ground has changed. Congressman Mike Johnson, Congressman, thank you for being here.